Hey friends, it's Laura with Laura's Handmade Haven. Welcome or welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me today. We're going to be continuing on our delightful desert sew-along. We're making the baby size quilt, so there are 9 blocks total for my quilt. We're on block 6 of 9, so pretty exciting. This week we're going to be working on the jade block, which right here is this little plant block right here that you see on the cover. On the baby quilt there is just the one, so this should be a pretty quick and easy stitch. I have gone ahead and cut out all the pieces for this block, just because there were very few to cut out. And cutting is pretty straightforward in the pattern if you have it. So you shouldn't have any problem with that whatsoever. I am going to show you a couple things I did to keep myself organized on my design board. So we're going to head on over to the sewing machine so I can talk you through that. If you've seen any of my videos, then you know that I like being organized. I like making things easier for myself any chance I can get. So this is what I've done. On my design board, I know that there are 4 leaves on either side of the stem, and they have the same little stitch and flip corners on each side, but they're opposite of one another. So what I've done is I lay them out on my design board with the squares and the correct corners. And when I move those onto my extension table here, I'll make sure I keep those in the same places, and that way I can go quickly and efficiently and get all of these little leaves sewn up lickety split. So without further ado, that's what I'm going to do first, is just sew all those leaves together. So when I move them onto my extension table, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of keep them in the area that they are going to be, right? So I know that this is my upper right corner, and this larger square goes right there. And just a couple things that you may wonder if this is the first time that you visited my channel. I am using a Juki DX7. I do have the extension table for my Juki. I love it, love it, love it. It is definitely a very good machine. I have the cone adapter, I guess, basically for the machine, so I can use a great big spool of thread rather than the smaller spools of thread. I have my stitch length set at 2.2. It's a straight stitch. I use a 1/4 inch piecing foot, and that helps me tremendously with those 1/4 inch seams. One other thing that I have done is I put washi tape here on my extension table. That way, for these stitch and flip corners, all I have to do is line up those points right on the seams of the washi tape, and I am good to go. Now, these leaves, you put the squares on opposite corners. So now that I have the one corner on there, it's easy for me to decide, or know, I guess, where the other one goes. So I'm just going to line it up and stitch across. Now you'll notice I cut 3 but not 4 of those leaves off, and that's just because I don't like cutting my thread. The more times you cut your thread, the more likely you are to have to rethread your machine, because sometimes, I don't care how good of a machine you have, sometimes it just comes unthreaded. So those are all of the leaves for the one side of the stem. Now we have to do the other side of the stem. And so to do that, we're just going to start with the smaller square, just because, well, I'm right-handed and that just makes sense to me. I mentioned this last time, I keep this cute little metal trash can on my table, so when I need to cut things off, it's right there. I started that with scrapbooking, actually. Anytime that, you had little paper scraps and things, and you had to, put them together, or now I am going to take these over to the ironing board and give them a good press, and then we will start putting the spacers between the leaves and get them on the stem. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just lay these out on my extension table, just because I have the room. I know the top 3 of each side gets these little spacers at the bottom of the leaf. So this is just going to kind of help me remember which leaves go where. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the first 3 off. I'm going to leave the other 3 on, because that way I have my sides separated. And I know that these will all flip down. So I can go ahead and put these 2 leaves together. They're at the top. And the 2 leaves are at the bottom. I'll do the same thing for the opposite side. Now I have 2 sections for each side, so I'll cut the first 2 off, leaving the second section on. Get these all turned around the correct way. And sew these together. There are spacers above and below these leaves as well. But we're just going to have the whole side sewn together, so we know all the leaves are together the way they're supposed to be. Now, if you're keeping track, this is my first side. So here are the little strand of leaves for the left-hand side of my block, and there is another piece that goes at the top and the bottom. The other side, the right side, has one piece that goes at only the bottom. Oh, you know what? I can't put that on yet. I almost messed up there, because that attaches in with the stem. That's interesting. Interesting little design element there. All right, so this is the left, here's the right. The right does have a piece that goes at the bottom, but there is not a piece at the top. Now we'll take our left-hand side with our string of leaves, and we're going to not pin, not press, but we're going to work in our stem all the way down. Okay, so now that we have our leaves sewn together, we can sew our stem onto the left-hand side of our plant, because that is actually going to happen before we sew the top spacer onto the left side of the jade plant. I'm just going to place this with the solid piece of fabric down. That way I can watch my seams and decide which way I want them to go as I'm working my way up the stem. Now, I'm not pinning this, and the way I'm getting away with that is I'm keeping my finger very tight, and I'm kind of pinching this other end. So I'm like stretching this out as I'm working along. And I'm not really stretching it per se. I'm just kind of working it in, making sure everything is lined up on that straight edge of that solid piece of fabric at the bottom of my sewing, and keeping my finger taut against the other end as I'm working my way up that stem for that 1/4 inch seam. Now we will be able to add in the spacer at the top before we sew the right hand side of the stem on. And this is what I started to grab earlier and then realized that it was not time yet. Because the other side of the jade plant does not have any spacing at the top, and it will match up on the other side of the stem. So again, I'm going to run this so my stem piece is on the bottom. That way I can watch those seams as I'm going along with the leaves. Just gonna get this. Okay, so I'm not pinning this size, and the way I'm gonna get away with that is I'm just going to pinch down here with my fingers to keep that together. And I'm going to work this in as I'm working down that stem. Now remember, I have that solid piece of fabric on the bottom. The stem piece is on the bottom of my sewing here, because I really wanted to pay attention to all of the little seams. And I want them to go the direction I want them to go. So this way, as I'm working my way down the stem, I can make sure that they all lay the way I want them to, and that way they'll press the way I want them to when I head over to the ironing board in just 1 minute. This block came together really quickly. All right, that's it. Let's press it out and get a reveal. Okay, so we are moving right along with this quilt. This little jade block goes right in here somewhere. We'll see. I don't know. There's a butterfly up above here, and the bunny is kind of even with him. So yeah, it's coming together. Once we get a couple more blocks up there, we'll be able to really lay it out and know exactly where they go. But for now, I mean, I think the bunny's happy being next to the jade. They look like they're friends. Or maybe the jade's a little concerned the bunny's going to eat it. I don't know. But anyway, it's fine. All right, so here we have our jade block done. That is block 6 of 9. So we only have 3 more blocks to go until we can put our baby quilt together. Thank you guys so much for joining me again. If this is your first video with me, make sure you like and subscribe. I would love to be able to say that you're getting notifications when my videos go live. I typically post on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so be watching for that. So until next time, find joy in all you do, carve out some time for crafting and creating, and remember it's always better when you make stuff up.